Hi, I'm Eloise Alterman, and I'm hanging out with Rob on Front Row Live.
What's up, guys? Rob here, Front Row Live Entertainment. I'm hanging out with a new artist that I recently got introduced to, and you just dropped your debut EP, and I'm like kind of obsessing over it, and it's only been out for like a week. Eloise, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I just played a little show here at Atlantic. It's a beautiful day in California. I just moved here, and really excited that my EP is out.
Now, talk to me a little bit about this EP because I feel like one of the scariest things to do as a musician is like releasing your debut single and also releasing that debut EP, just because you want to make sure it's the appropriate way to kind of introduce yourself to the world. Like, what was it about these like 6 tracks on this EP that like you felt created this body of work for you?
So it was a difficult choice picking which ones to put on Sad Bird the Hurting Phase, but as I was going back through my notebooks and everything that I had written during, which is when I wrote this EP, I noticed that a lot of the songs in the beginning were kind of the best because it was when I was really hurt the most, and there were tons of songs in between them, but there are a few that it's like it took like 5 songs to get to one good one. Sometimes too, it's like they were all rough drafts because I was still just like moving through all these different feelings at the time.
Yeah.
And I went back through and I chose the ones that meant the most to me when it comes to like an actual hurting phase and like the immediate feelings that you have when your heart is broken.
And like, I love that you do that with with your music. Like, I love how vulnerable you are with your audience, and you give us this level, especially with your voice. You give us this level where like I start to feel like I'm part of that song. Like I start to feel like I'm in that experience as well. Like, how do you go about that? Like, when you're writing this music or these lyrics, like, do you know what you're writing, or is this something that's just kind of flowing out of you while you're in that space?
I mean, writing for me has always been therapeutic. Like that, I don't like talking about how I'm feeling like any of us do. But it's kind of my time to check in on myself and to understand really and like figure out what I am feeling. And I think one of the most amazing things about music is like the same way that I listened to music when I was younger was I'd listen to a song and like, yeah, I cared about what the artist was singing about, but I'd apply it to what I was going through. And that's one of the most special things I think like I've heard so far about, feedback about these songs is girls and guys have been like, I feel this, like I needed this song. And there's something about feeling understood when you're going through something that's really important.
Yeah, specifically like with the single "Her," and I find it interesting that, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it's the first song that you released on the EP, but it was the last one to kind of write.
Yeah.
So how does that work for you? Because it's like this song wouldn't have existed if you thought you still needed one more song, right? Like, so how was that process for you? Like, how did you discover this song? How did this song kind of come to you?
Well, I had walked into a write with my friend Dave Pittenger and Nolan Sipe, who Nolan also wrote Carousel, which is on the EP with me.
Another favorite for sure.
Yeah, we love that one. And I walked in with them. The EP is done. And they, when you're a writer, like you're always trying to get, cuts and stuff because you write all these songs that don't go anywhere. And getting a song cut by me, it doesn't necessarily mean something, but it does mean the song will at least live out there somewhere. And they're like, well, what's the EP missing? And I'm like, well, it's done. They're like, but what's it missing? I'm like, well, I did never write a song about her. And that's when Dave was like, we're writing a song about her. And I was like, no. So that's how it went that day. And honestly, there were just enough pages in my notebook about her anyways that I didn't even realize the song had been written for a year.
Dang.
And it was a really easy write because it just kind of flowed out. And I realized at the end of it when I was driving home, I was like, the song isn't about her. It's about me. It's about the unraveling of someone. When you feel all those things, like when you love someone and when you're jealous and when you're heartbroken, it's like, it wasn't about her. It was about me. So.
Yeah, to me, like it almost sounds like that's closure. Like that's what that song kind of is, which is interesting.
Yeah, it was like closure for me. That's what songwriting is, That's why we love it.
Now, how does that work for you? Like, because obviously when you're writing it, you're going through that motion or you're going through that moment all over again, that experience all over again, but then you perform it a couple times. Like, does that feeling or that anger or that sadness? Like, does that ever go away, or do you feel like it gets stronger within every performance that you have?
I mean, when I'm on stage, I used to be really nervous, but lately I've really enjoyed it. And, I'm really focused on sounding good and giving a good show when I can. But there are times I get lost in the songs and it brings me right back, just like any song or smell can, like when you are just immediately transported back to a time in your life or a time period. And it's not that I still feel as strongly as I did the night that I wrote that song and the night that I was crying, in my closet or whatever. But I think it's that I feel for her, and I remember the feeling, and it can take me right back in an instant.
Yeah. Now, for you, like working with Dave Cobb, which incredible producer, like how did he one help you be comfortable during this like whole level of vulnerability? And two, how did he help you kind of discover your voice and your sound for this EP?
Well, so I had already come to him with all the songs written. So the vulnerability was already there, but with producers sometimes it's hard. It just depends on the producer, but a lot of songs are very track based, so it's like the music is level with the vocal.
Yeah.
And like there's a time and place for that, and there's a time and place for a song that you just want to get drunk to and dance to. But with Dave Cobb, like one of the most special things about him is that he really cares about the vocal, and he always says it's like the voice first. And he loved the songs, and honestly, like we just walked in there and we played the songs how the demos were with the band. I was in the vocal booth, they were all there, they all learned them, and then we go into the console room, and that's when Dave would start producing it out, but we already had the bones to it. And honestly, those days with Dave Cobb and the band were some of my favorite days. I was so sad when it was all over because I was like, what am I supposed to do every day? We had family dinners every night. In the studio, there's like a huge dining room table. But I mean, the thing about Dave Cobb that is just so special is just in Nashville as well. Like, this music, it allows it to set itself apart from some of the stuff maybe you're hearing around here, stuff like that, just in a way that it's still pop. But I still lived in Nashville for 7 years. I still have a little bit of that in me. And Dave Cobb is, the king of producing in Nashville. Yeah. So.
And back to like saying how he is all about like the vocals. That's one thing that really drew my attention the first listen on this EP is that like you're being vulnerable and you're being open to a whole new audience. But at the same time, you're not covering your voice with instrumentation. Like I feel like your voice is the instrument and everything else is just there as background, right? Like, so was that an idea that you and Cobb had, or is that something that you wanted to do, but maybe it was difficult to do because you were putting yourself out there even more?
So I moved to Nashville when I was 17, and in the beginning, I think a lot of the tracks that I did were just because people told me how to do them, when you're young and naive. And I'd always just been a singer and loved songwriting. I was never a producer. I didn't know, like, oh, the vocals should be turned up. This stuff should be at this level. Like, I just didn't know what made things special, if that makes sense. But as I got older and as I lived there longer, I think I started to just really figure out what my sound was. And I just kept getting, positive feedback that they wanted my vocal higher. And I was like, okay, let's jack it up.
And that's not nerve-wracking for you, especially like when you're performing it live?
No, not at all. I love singing. That was always my favorite. That's why I started all this. I grew up karaokeing my whole life. I love singing.
So how did karaoke kind of helped you like discover your voice? Because I feel like with karaoke, we have that go-to, whether it's a song or a falsetto that we love to try, even though we may or may not be able to do it. But like, how did you discover your sound and like figure out, all right, I can totally do this?
Well, definitely my karaoke days were not where I discovered my sound. I was about 9, and I'm sure my parents wanted to break the karaoke machine with a bat. But I think I probably once I taught myself how to play guitar and piano, I think was when I realized I was really serious about this. And I mean, over the years, I started writing, and then from there, it just kind of spiraled into me finding my voice and me realizing, like, I would just write, like, these, like, 7-minute songs. And I was like, who do I think I am? Led Zeppelin? But as time went on, like, I mean, they got shorter and they got better, and I started getting positive feedback just from people around town, and that helps. Like, having a support system really helps you be like, okay, I can do this, at least for me. But I'm not a confident human being, but I'm very confident when it just comes to music, just because I love it. You know, if that makes, not in like an arrogant way, just I love it so much, like I'm gonna do it either way.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not a job. Like it's more
Yeah,
of a
it's my
passion.
love.
Yeah.
It's my love.
Now with these 6 tracks that are on the EP, like what song would you say was like the biggest challenge lyrically for you to write?
Carousel, probably. That one was like taking a standardized test a little bit. Honestly, like I mean,
Interesting way to put it.
it's not. I mean, like, you know, there's some rights where you go in and you're like seasons. I was so like, I had this in my notebook. I was like, the lyric, like we had too many choices for verses and for the chorus, and it was so much fun. And I was drinking tequila out of a teacup, and I'm with Daniel Tashian, and we're on Zoom with Jake Gosling, and I'm like, this is the best day ever. And then there's other rights where it feels like you're working, you know, and that's just how Carousel felt, but in the best way. Like we had written like half of a song, and then we were like, do we love it? And I was like, I don't think we love it. And so then we scratched it, and they asked if I had any other title ideas. And I'm just flipping through my notebook like, let me check if I have any others. And there was one that said Carousel. And what's weird is the track already sounded similar to something that would be played at a fair, if you've heard the track. And once we started writing it, like I knew I wanted to do something about the horses and about the, you know, the painted plastic and stuff like that. Like the lyrics really mean so much to me. But it took just some finessing, like rhyming and, you know, making it all make sense with the melody. But that's part of songwriting, you know, put in the work.
What about vocally? Which song would you say was like the biggest challenge for you?
I mean, none of them are challenging in like a belting way. I think Her, sometimes it's more of a talky song, and it is more track based, and so like performing it live with a track is totally fine. But sometimes when it's just acoustic, like I love playing 4 in the morning and Sad Bird Still Sings and stuff. But Her, we wrote to a track, and sometimes ones like those like are not harder to sing in person, but they don't give the same effect like they do with the track, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I mean, nothing kills me up there yet. So
Now talk to me about the writing process between. I'm actually like I'm not sure which one to even ask about because I loved Sad Bird Still Sings, and I also love I Still Love You. I'm Still in Love with You, right?
I Still Love You.
I Still Love You. So those two songs, like, what was that writing process like for those tracks in particular? Like, did you come into the session like knowing that that's what you were gonna write, or was this another Her situation where it's just like kind of flowed out at you?
Sad Bird Still Sings, I was actually in Zion, like the national park. And I knew I was when I just signed with Atlantic, and they were like, okay, you're doing an EP. And I was like, okay. So I had to go write for it. And it was still during the, and I was like, I'm not writing in this apartment for one more day. I can't do it. I had just written for a month in my apartment over Zoom. And so I was
Your
like,
apartment as in Zion or
no, in Nashville.
Oh, in Nashville,
And so I was like, okay, so I'm going on a trip, and went on a trip and was in the hotel during the day, would, you know, go on hikes and stuff, go in the hot tub, hang out. But still had to write. I was there to work.
Yeah.
But I had written with Dan Hennig, and it was my first time meeting him over Zoom. And I was like, so I have this title. I've had it for like a year, but I don't know yet what to do with it. And then as we started talking longer, you know, I was opening up to him and telling him a story, and he was like, there you have it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. So then we wrote it, and I went on a hike that night.
It sounds like everybody that was involved during these sessions, whether producer or co-writers, like it sounds like they already knew that you had stuff in mind. All they had to do was just ask you.
Yeah, I'm an open book, and I come prepared with emotions.
Yeah.
I'm a feeler.
So with this EP as a whole, like what is the proudest moment that you've had, like either during the writing session, during the recording session, or even now that it's out?
I think just watching it all come together, like when you're writing something, the most nerve-wracking thing was like, you know, I'm a singer-songwriter. Like I'm not a model or like all the different things, or like an actress, or all the things that come with, you know, making an EP. But it was such a great challenge just to like be on a set where you're doing a photo shoot and a music video the same day, and then you have a stylist, and you're trying to pick out like what's your look. And I know what my look is, but just like putting it together, like it just felt so messy for so long. But then all of a sudden I saw it all come together, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's the EP. That's it. That's what we had envisioned. So I think that was the coolest part.
That's really cool. Well, I'm super excited about this EP. I'm excited that I got introduced to you.
Yeah, that's thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to more music from you. In the meantime, like those new fans that are now discovering you because of this EP, like, do you plan to do any tours, like any like shows coming up?
I'm playing lots of shows right now in LA, and I'm on Friday I go to play some in Nashville, but this summer I'll be in LA. But until then, we'll keep you posted.